How do you make indie games full-time? Well, you kind of have to figure out how to make a small indie project that brings in a pretty large chunk of revenue. In short, you have to be efficient, right? Jonas Tyroller is a master of efficiency. His game Thronefall has brought in hundreds of thousands of downloads, so I had to chat with him and hear his thought process on efficiency. We chatted about the conundrum of project overload, the importance of choosing one game project from the rest of your ideas, how you know if your game idea is even worth your time, and perhaps if you should quit the project altogether, why working with a team can actually be cheaper than working solo, why giving a royalty share to a publisher or a team member actually doesn't matter. We talk about optimization, and I've saved the best for last. We open up his masterpiece, Thronefall, inside of Unity, and I think you're going to be shocked at what it looks like under the hood. This was a real eye-opener for me. Oh, and by the way, speaking of getting a bird's eye view of a massive Unity project, let's talk about today's sponsor, Bezi. They're the creators of this new and interesting tool for Unity that uses AI to write code and scripts and has a real-time, deep context of your entire project. It has full context of the code base, asset library, scene graph, and components, allowing it to provide tailored suggestions for your game. It can also pinpoint scripts, components, and scene interactions, maybe causing issues, and propose custom fixes to help you identify performance bottlenecks. What's really unique is that it can also give a detailed, technical explanation of your entire project, which could save a ton of digging around when collaborating with other team members on a larger project. Your project integrity and data privacy are, of course, completely secure, so your project stays 100% yours. Bezi is currently in active development and will have a ton of new updates coming soon, including the ability to preview and accept code changes directly within your scripts. That's pretty cool. They have just opened up early access for everyone, that includes you, so you can download it right now to check it out for yourself by simply clicking the link in the description.
So I know a lot of highly creative people struggle with this project overload, that they have way too many projects than they can possibly handle. And I think you need to limit yourself a little bit for sure. Like you can't do everything. But what already helps massively is just having your priorities sorted. And that was what I think what helped me recently get on track a little bit better is, all right, you have all of these projects, you can have like 100 projects, whatever, who cares? But what you need to deal with it and to keep your sanity is you need a priority list. You need like, this is number 1 priority, this is number 2 priority, number 3 priority, and then this is lower priority stuff, so that you know whenever you have some time, you should spend the majority of your time on this, then a little bit time on this, and then you just kind of go through the list like that. And I think that way you can keep your sanity relatively well, as long as you have a priority list like that.
Man, it's hard because have you ever had a little tiny project that you're working on and you're thinking, this could be the greatest thing ever? You know, but it's small, and there's a 90% chance it'll fail, but there's a 10% chance that it'll go gangbusters. Like I saw you were writing, by the way. I wrote a whole novel, and I would love to talk to you about writing, because writing is actually my favorite thing to do. If there's anything that I would wish I could spend all my time doing, it's 2 things: writing and writing music. Those are my 2 favorite things. Okay. I love writing novels. And
you're a very, very typical creative person.
So are you, man.
You have way too many passions. Like you want to make short movies, you want to make music, you want to write. This is exactly what I'm talking about.
And
man.
So, but here's the thing: is like, I found that I'm like, I can't get this book edited and finished because I'm like, there's a 90% chance I suck at writing. Like, there's no way that I'm good at writing. And the reason why is because it's like, I'm pretty good at making games. I'm pretty good at podcasting. I'm pretty good at writing music. It's like, there's no way that I'm good at writing as well. I guess I'm just saying, this sounds really cocky. I'm just saying that I can't be talented at everything. You know, I'm probably only talented at these things. And so I'm just like, I guess what I'm saying is, I don't know how to when do you gamble? When do you say, no, I'm going to put my time into this? How do you know when to make the gamble?
So first of all, I think interestingly, creative skills do oftentimes transfer. Not all of them, but for example, empathy, like the ability to come up with ideas, to judge your own ideas, and especially the ability to communicate and the ability to imagine how something would feel like to somebody who has never seen that piece of work again. I think if you have these skills, they transfer incredibly well to almost every creative discipline, and that's why a lot of creative people are also very talented at multiple creative disciplines. But to that question, how you decide which gambles to take, I don't know, man. It's incredibly it's incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
Like there are too many factors. Like you can maybe run the math if you break it down into a couple of different estimates, but you never know if those numbers are anywhere close to reality, and like reality is very complicated. So,
well, you know, the problem with having kids in a family, and it's amazing. It's the best thing ever. But the problem with it is that most of your decisions, in the end, when you're trying to sleep at night, most of your creative decisions end up being driven by the financial opportunity. At least in my case,
you can take less risk than you otherwise could, because
That's right.
If you don't have a family, if you still have a lot of time, then you're like, I can afford only taking on a project that only has a 20% chance of success because I'm still young. I don't have any responsibilities, whatever.
Yeah.
But then I understand the older you get, and also the more responsibilities you have for other people, the more risk averse you'll obviously get. I think very, very, very obvious. And also the bigger your team is, if you have like more people that depend on you.
Mm-hmm. You know, I think the majority of my brand, whether it's, you know, making story-driven atmospheric games that are emotional and kind of moody, or my YouTube brand, those two things, I am like, it's almost like I took a risk and planted this seed and made this garden when I was in my 20s, when I didn't have responsibility. And I was like, oh, I'm going to make a moody game. Boom, it worked. And so I've been living off that forte and that brand that I built when I was in my 20s. And the same is true with like YouTube. It's like I started doing YouTube when I was younger, when I didn't have kids. And I've been sort of living off of that risk that I took when I was in my 20s. And I don't know if I've planted any new seeds or tried anything new since I've had kids. So like starting a band, writing a book, you know, none of that I've actually started because I just haven't had I haven't been willing to sacrifice the opportunity cost. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
By that?
Yeah, I think I do. Mm-hmm.
So it's hard. It's hard because I think I'm ready to try something else, you know, in the creative space.
So do you feel some creative itches inside you?
Yes, very much.
Which direction do you feel pulled in most? Is it writing? Is it music? Or if you had like complete freedom, like let's say you have a 3-week holiday, your brain gets uploaded into a server, and you can just
I would probably, man, that's great, dude. I wish I could. I wish I could do that. There's 3 things. I'm curious if you have any. I'd love to ask you. I'll ask you after I give my answer. I want to finish my book. It's called Summervale. I want to write an album that sounds like The Cure. I love The Cure. It's my favorite band. So I think I could write an album like that and have that vibe. And I can sing, so I would sing and do all that. So I'd spend 2 weeks doing that. Or, number 3, build a chicken coop. So me and my wife, we have land, and we're building on some land, and I want to start farming. So I want to learn how to farm. So that's
nice.
Totally different. Nice. But yeah, so those are the directions I'm pulled, and it's so hard.
Do you also feel any itches to start new game projects as well?
Yeah.
Or is it like...
Yeah, but
That is
that's
all.
not new. I mean, that's something
okay.
I just know how to do, you know?
Okay.
Dude, I want to ask you after the podcast, I want to ask you about a game idea I have, because
Okay.
what I want to do for future games, and this is something Gavin told me, Gavin, the creative Choo Choo Charles.
Yeah.
He said, all I'll say, because I was talking about the next project, he said, just before you start anything, be absolutely sure that it's actually commercially viable on a big project. I want to know, and Gavin, if you're listening right now, I probably, simplified what you said, but I wonder what you think about that, Jonas.
Yeah. And that's an easy agree.
Is it? Because is it even possible to figure out if something's commercially viable?
You can't ever do it perfectly because you don't have a crystal ball that's gonna tell you the outcome of your actions beforehand. But you can at the very least go through rigorous and extended efforts to validate your ideas before you invest like a significant portion of your life into them.
Right.
I always find it crazy, like a game project for like the screenshot I showed you from Blueprints. I think the guy who made that spent something like 7 to 8 years on that. If you think about that, that's
the ROI is not there. Because
not sure in this case. The game turned out very, very great.
Let's take a look at this. Let's take a look. Okay, so it's been out since when? April?
Yes, it's relatively recent, but I would even argue, even if this one doesn't turn out to be commercially viable, it was a worthwhile time investment because it's just a fantastic game and the world is better off with it. But what I guess my main point was that there's like 10% of your life, dude. Like, it's like
I know.
Like, you can only make like 10 games like this in your lifetime.
Yeah.
This is like such a wild thought. And even for something like Thronefall, where we spent 4 years or something, like I can only make 10 more games like this, maybe.
Yeah. Well, at the solo dev or like the tiny team scale, absolutely. Okay, I'm looking up Blueprints right now. I think I was completely wrong. So if the developer's listening to me right now, okay. So the game, it's Raw Fury, by the way. So they're probably going to promote the heck out of it. Let's see here. Oh, okay. Oh yeah, ROI is there. ROI is there.
Yeah.
April 10th, 2025. So that was less than a month ago, and it's already got 5,500 very positive reviews.
Yeah, it's going very well and deservedly so. Yeah.
Well, it looks gorgeous. It looks gorgeous.
Especially considering this is a puzzle game. Puzzle games always have a more difficult time than other genres. So
1,000%, 1,000%. Dude, I have this idea for a game. I have several ideas. I wanted to get your thoughts on this. And this has to do with scale, and it has to do with ROI. You were talking about how many games did you say? Maybe 10 total games in your life? Is that what you said?
It depends obviously on your approach. You can make very tiny games. You can make 6-month projects or something, make a lot more games.
So I have this idea, okay? Have you noticed a lot of movie studios or film studios, and again, this is related to scale, so it's the same topic. It's about big projects versus small projects, which we've talked about. Have you noticed a lot of film studios are starting to start game studios? Bad Robot did it. And that's J.J. Abrams. Blumhouse did it. Annapurna did it. These are all art house. Several of them are art house sort of, and even not A24. No, it's just Annapurna. So there's like three different sort of auteur film studios started game studios. My idea is, I want to get into film, and I love telling stories. That's like my forte. I would say your forte, correct me if I'm wrong, I think your forte is creating small, tight game loops and mechanics that are just really, really fun on repeat. Would you say that's one of your fortes?
If I had to say one thing for like my game design skills, I would say I'm a game system designer, so I'm very good at balancing, coming up with game mechanics and gameplay, coding, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I'm trash at that. I'm really bad at that. That's my weakest thing. My forte is storytelling. So I'm like, okay, if I'm all about leaning into your forte, that's what I'm all about. My thinking was, and I would love to get your thoughts on this. What if I just made movies that are games? And they take 6 months. So it's like
movies, they're games, so interactive movies in a way. Or
it's just 3D stories. You go through an environment and it's a really strong story. What if I threw away the whole idea that I need some really strong loop and some strong mechanic that's super unique? What if I threw away the idea that I need replayability and instead made tiny little 2-hour movies that are games, and I did them fast? And they're just great stories. So for example, imagine a horror movie like, you ever seen Insidious before?
No.
Insidious is this amazing horror movie. It's terrifying. And it's about a family that's haunted by Satan, okay? Like demons and Satan. Imagine you just get to play that. And I know this isn't profound, but what I'm talking about in particular is I could do this quick. It wouldn't take me long because it's essentially a walking sim with a really good story. I know it's not unique, but I'm thinking, what if I did that? What if I just made boom, 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 release 3 of these a year? And they have the Thomas Brush, directed by Thomas Brush on there.
I would like to give you some very strong encouragement on that.
Really?
Because, I do. Because people will know that it comes from heart. And people nowadays appreciate that, I think, more than ever with all of that AI-generated slop starting to clump up the systems and so on. I think people really, really do appreciate games that come from heart, and you being like, okay, I know this is maybe not commercially 100% ideal, but I'm just gonna go with it because I love making that kind of stuff, and I'm good at that kind of stuff. And I even think it's probably gonna make up for the disadvantages you get from it, because just if you lean into something you're good at, it's gonna be better.
Right.
My core belief is, if you want your games to sell, the main thing you need to do is just make great games. Like one of my core game design beliefs. So I'm like, anything you do to do that, anything you do to just make better games, and obviously leaning into what you're good at very much does that, is just something that's gonna definitely help you. On top of that, I love short games anyway. Like I really do like short 2-hour experiences that are very memorable, and I know that a lot of people do like those short experiences because we like stuff that respects our time. We don't want to waste our time. There are always going to be some players that be like, oh, it's only 2 hours and not worth spending any money on whatever. I think there are more than enough people who appreciate short games, like a short, juicy experience.
Yep.
I think that's great.
And, it caters to the solo dev. Because I want to do solo dev this year. I probably want to do it for like 2 years. I just want to be a hermit again. And there's something romantic about it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I'm curious, is your solo dev life cyclical? Do you go solo dev, then work with a team, then solo dev, then you work with a team? Because you're solo now, right?
They both scratch kind of different itches. If you're solo, you have like all the freedom you want. You can do whatever you want. You don't need to justify any of your ideas. Mm-hmm. You want to do something really stupid, there's nobody who's like, oh, that's always kind of stupid. You can just do it. That's very liberating. Mm-hmm. At the same time, team projects with a good team are just more likely to be successful. That's also the case. So I think for my commercial projects, I will try to go with a team whenever I can, with a good team. A lot of these tech billionaires, I've heard this advice given a couple of times. You don't need to like them, but they do give good advice sometimes. Is what actually matters.
You're talking about Elon Musk, aren't you?
Maybe not. Well, but what actually matters is not the size of your team, but the talent density you have in your team. Much more important. So if you bring somebody in who can do something much better than you, and you just let that person do that one thing, then it's like an upgrade for the team because you basically improve the average skill of your team. But if you bring somebody into your team to just do something worse that you could also do to maybe get it done faster, I guess doing something faster is another reason to sometimes bring somebody in. But in general, if you want to build something where the only goal is to make it as good as possible, then obviously the conclusion from that is that you only bring people in who can do something better than you so that you get a better end result.
Okay. Have you ever paid somebody a full-time salary?
We have a community manager who I think can live off of what we pay him.
Okay.
So it's a freelancing contract.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's not really game dev though. It's like studio management, right? I guess the reason I ask is because, or the reason I clarify that is because you've never, when you say team, it's not a team of salaried positions or contract workers that are building your game. Instead, it's a team effort, meaning you guys get a royalty share, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I think this is an interesting, I wanted to ask you about this. I can't bring myself to do that. Because
why?
Because I like to be in charge.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say leadership is forfeited when you do that? When you partner up like that?
When you share responsibility and revenue and everything.
Because suddenly everyone's got a stake in it, and therefore they feel like they have a valid leadership position. They have a say, and so they can trump what you say.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah. And it also happens all the time. You have to be willing to make compromises, and you also oftentimes obviously have these discussions. It's a little bit of a give and take also, where like, okay, yeah, I guess you're right on that. And sometimes you have to walk your own opinion back a little bit to make room for what the other person thinks. And the very difficult thing about it is, of course, to not make it something personal, because it can very easily become something personal where it's like, no, you blocked my idea, so now I'm going to block yours. And you need to be very careful that you don't end up in that kind of team dynamic.
Yeah.
But as long as you're like reasonable and try very hard not to take anything personal, I think it's extremely productive. And I also think that the incentive of people actually having ownership over the project does very much help to make them give their best, and also to, they also feel more of that responsibility. So I think people are also more proactive. Like a lot of times, like the employee mindset is kind of, okay, I'm just gonna do what you tell me. I'll just turn my brain off. You're the brain. I'm just gonna do whatever you say. The advantage of having somebody with shared ownership is that they actually proactively do things and proactively use their brain for you. So oftentimes you come back to the project and there's just been a lot of good decisions been made on your behalf that you didn't have to take yourself. So it would have been like, okay, Paul works on something for a week. All of a sudden, there's like a new Git commit, and like all of the UI looks way better now. And I'm like, oh, I couldn't have done it better, basically. Like,
oh man, that's beautiful. So in a way, what's happened is, for me, I can't do it emotionally because I like to be in charge. I'm just being as transparent as I can. I like to be in charge. Number two, you kind of forfeit getting a publisher because there's not much revenue share to split. You see what I mean? Like, let's say a publisher comes in and they're like, well, we want to give you guys $300,000 for 30% of the revenue. Well, you've already done a 50-50 split. So now you got to give 30%, and now you got to split 70. And that sucks.
I don't think it matters that much, to be honest. It's like there are certain kinds of media or success where it's an exponential curve. The amount of success you can have is sort of distributed like an exponential curve. There are a lot of people getting nothing, and then all of a sudden there's like a very steep increase where the next guy gets like double what the last one got, and on an exponential, having 50% more or 50% less is actually not that big of a difference on an exponential scale. So I don't think it surprisingly doesn't have that big of an impact on whether you're profitable or not.
Is that what you're talking about? Can you see that?
Exactly, that's what I mean.
Okay, now, did I put Thronefall in the correct spot?
Yeah, I think so. Somewhere around there, maybe. Yeah.
So now let's try. Okay, now that we've got your graph, I'm an idiot, dude. I'm trying to figure this out.
Yeah. Okay.
So you're like, yeah, sure. So what you're saying is, look, it doesn't matter. You're going to make very little money or a lot of money. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying if you cut all of these bars that you just drew in half, the amount of them that are above a specific line doesn't actually change that much. Like at the moment, they're like maybe 10% above the line. If you cut them in half, it's not like only half of them are above the line.
I know, but look, if let's say this is I'm trying to figure out what you're saying. If this is my revenue right here, let's say that's my game. Mm-hmm. If I partnered up with somebody, I just lost all of that revenue.
Yeah, but can you see that you're still in the top 1% of everybody? Still?
I know, but not really because I only got this.
Yeah, but it doesn't. At that point, I don't think it matters.
It's still a lot of money, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Exactly what I'm saying is like,
hold on. Let me finish my point.
Okay.
Because I'm devil's advocating you here. Okay, let's say that bar right there that I just circled, that's $100,000. Okay. Mm-hmm. If I partnered up with a publisher and a partner, let's say I partnered up with you and we made a game. And we got a publisher. Mm-hmm. Now, I only made $30K. Well, I mean, whatever the number is after the Steam cut. You barely made anything. You made $20K. You can't live on that. You lose everything. You have to go get a job. Or if you do it alone, you make $100K.
Exactly. So there's a small, narrow band where the minus 50% is going to make the difference for you. But I'm saying you have a certain there is a certain break-even point that you have. And the odds of landing exactly on this break-even point with your game is minuscule. You're either gonna make way less than you need to break even, or you're gonna make way more than you need to break even. So it's taking 50% away is not gonna change your odds that much, actually.
Okay, so royalty shares and revenue share doesn't really matter if you make a good game.
Yeah, it's like if you made the next hit indie game, if you make the next Undertale, doesn't really matter if you have another partner with you that takes 50% of what you would have gotten. It's like,
okay,
sure thing. I guess I could have made double if I made this game alone, but I didn't. I can't make this game alone anyway. So what's the point of making the comparison in the first place?
Okay, so in order to stay away from the midpoint, or that where it's, I think I know what you're saying. So in order to stay away from that bottom of the bell curve, or not bell curve, the bottom of that exponential curve, you should probably partner up. Is that what you're saying?
There's a priority list. You should only partner up with people who make your team better.
Sure.
If you can't do that, then you should work alone. And the worst thing you can do is to work with people who make your team worse.
Okay, so what you're saying is do everything we can to hit this spot, even if that means giving up royalty shares.
Yeah, if you hit that spot, it also doesn't matter. If you're like 50% lower, that's kind of fine. Yeah.
And what I'm saying is it's very, very difficult to get to that spot as a solo anyway. So might as well just partner up with people and work with people to get to that higher spot.
Exactly. I think it's very much worth it. I think the cost benefit analysis, maybe to simplify this whole thing a little bit, is just like you get way more benefit from partnering with somebody than it costs you. That's like if I have to put it very simply
Yeah.
in plain English, that's what it is. That's exactly what it is.
Unless you're brilliant.
Unless you're brilliant, that's also exactly what I said earlier. You should only team up with people who make your team better in some way because they can do certain things better than you can.
I love that, dude. Your brain, it always thinks in terms of charts. It's like your brain is a TI-83 calculator. Every time we talk, you end up sending me a chart or something, or giving me like, well, the X and the Y. But I think that's great. You know, it helps me a lot. It helps me a ton. What should I do here, Jonas? Should I? And then let's open up Thronefall. Let me get your advice on something. Should I sacrifice my savings and finish Twisted Tower strong? Should I dig into my savings, hire out a couple people, and make this thing awesome and release it in October? The demo has over 1,000 reviews. Very positive. I think we're at like 90%. Primarily the issues are optimization. So that's what we need to really focus on. Should I hire out people, spend $40,000 on team members? Let's just assume my family will be fine, okay? Let's assume that. Assuming my family will be fine, should I take $40,000 and invest it in a team, or should I do it all myself?
So how big are the optimization problems we're talking here? How many people... Like which percentage of players?
I would say probably 10% of the players are like, I'm getting hitching, frame rates lower than 40. And these are people on low end machines or Steam Deck. Steam Deck is averaging like 20 to 40 FPS.
Okay, and have you undergone any optimization efforts so far, or is it all just like anything?
Yeah, I haven't done anything yet.
So my guess would be, if you haven't done anything yet, my guess would be that there are a couple of very low-hanging fruits, and usually the low-hanging fruits usually they tend to fix almost all of the problems already.
Yeah.
So
what would they be?
I guess for a 3D game, the biggest things would of course be reducing mesh and material count. So for example, having material texture atlases, multiple materials on one material so that you have fewer draw calls. I think reducing draw calls is the main thing. And obviously occlusion culling.
Yeah, that's already done.
Yeah, okay, because that's a big one, of course. If you have that fruit already plucked, then it can of course no longer be plucked. But then you still have all of this, as mentioned, all of this batching and mesh baking.
That's what I'm struggling with. I've already done the light mapping as well.
Yeah.
The one I'm struggling with is creating atlases. I'm like, damn, I don't want to do that. How am I going to do that?
I think the a little bit the messed up thing here is that it's really annoying if you didn't do it to begin with. It's like,
oh no.
If you start a project with that in mind, then you would, for example, put many textures that you want to reuse on one sheet, and then when you map it, just map it correctly.
I think Meshbaker does it. I don't know if you know Meshbaker. It's an asset. I think it'll do it for me. But yeah,
nice.
Well, I ask this all related to our graph, which is like, does Thomas get? Let's pretend I spent $500,000. I didn't, but let's pretend. Let's pretend I spent $500,000 on this game already. I have over 1,000 reviews, very positive for the demo on Steam. It's doing great. I think that's really good, right?
Yep.
We're almost at 100,000 wish lists. Is it worth it to spend some money and get some help on the project?
Well, the reason why I'm asking questions is because it very much depends on the details a little bit, right? If it's like 1% of players gonna have performance issues, then I would be like, whatever, release it in the state it's in now. If you're like 10%,
I think it's 10%. Yeah.
If you think it's 10%, then obviously that's probably something you want to fix, because that would potentially be 10% thumbs down at least. Like, because everybody who's gonna have performance issues.
Well, I mean, I say that because
a thumbs down.
the reviews for the game are like, it's a good game. It runs at really low frame rate.
So
And
this is
so-
even now something that comes up in the reviews.
Yeah, that's how I
frequently.
know. That's how I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
it's probably 10% because people are struggling with the demo's performance optimization. So like, I guess what you're saying is it seems like a good idea to hire out someone to optimize the game.
It seems like a good idea to fix it, and now the next question would be, what's the easiest way to do that?
Yeah, well, Thomas's time needs to be spent on the story. You know, I need to be really focused on making the story and the atmosphere and the like triggered events and like jump scares. I need to be focused on that because that's what I'm really good at.
Yeah.
Hire someone to do optimization seems like the smartest move to get us into that top tier of the exponential curve, right?
I think it sounds like there could be a good investment because I guess what I'm hearing also a little bit is that optimization is maybe not something you have super large amount of experience with. So this is one of those cases where you can bring in an expert into your team who has actually done game optimization before and just have them do it. They'll probably do it much faster and more efficiently and also better than you can. So that seems like maybe one of those cases where I'd be like, yeah, that probably sounds like a good idea. Ideally, maybe not spend something like 40,000. Maybe have somebody.
No, that won't. No, I think that'll be like 10. I think that'll be 10,000.
I think ideally what you're looking for is to have a really strong developer work on it for 2 months and just be like, do your best. Do your best. You have 2 months. There you go.
Well, I had a meeting with, and I'll plug him. I had a meeting with Game Dev Guru. I don't know if anyone knows Game Dev Guru, but I think his name is, what's his name? Ruben?
I don't know, but I know his channel.
Game Dev Guru is Ruben, yeah. And I had a meeting with him, and he said what he's going to do is basically just open up the project and pinpoint the thing. Because if someone could just pinpoint the thing, whatever it was, Thomas, your shadows, the resolution is really high. What are you doing? If someone could just say that, then I'll go in and fix it, you know? But it's like, I almost feel like I'm getting shouted at by all these different languages, and I don't because when I look at the profiler, that's how it feels. I'm like, what am I looking at? No matter how hard I've tried to figure out profiler, it's just this different realm that I don't fully understand, you know? So I think I need someone to go in there and do that while I worry about the story, you know?
I think the thing with the profiler is that you kind of need to look at it couple of times in different projects and so on to sort of build an intuition for how a healthy game should look like, and then when you see something that differs from that, then you can see what's wrong with it. For example, you're like, okay, usually I have like 50-50 split between CPU and GPU load, and then all of a sudden here's a game that has like 90% GPU load, then I know that something's wrong. That kind of thing.
Well, let's open up a healthy project.
Thronefall is not that healthy, but I would
love to see what kind of optimizations are even necessary, considering you're not using normal maps, you're not using specular, I don't think. You're just straight up toon shading its albedo, and it looks like you're only using like a directional light and maybe some culled point lights. Is that correct?
Hold on, I'm trying to share my screen real quick. Then
I'll do it.
We'll talk further. So
click present down there.
I'll click present and then I'll choose one screen. Let's take this one. Can you see it?
I can now. And this will be a separate recording as well, so I'll be able to edit it in.
That's perfect. That's wonderful.
Okay, so can we talk really quick before you dive in, so that there's a nice segue here. I like a good segue. When it comes to your lighting, it's not baked because it's a single directional light. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's a single directional light, and we only have real-time shadows.
Yep. So if you were to take that directional light and rotate it, can I see it really quick?
Yep. Let's find it.
I want to see how important lighting is to the game. Wow. Okay, and you've got very low poly meshes. That's why it's being kind of sticky, because it's the low poly meshes. Cool. Oh, look at this. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different planes.
Yeah, it's exactly
goodness.
Exactly the kind of jankiness you would expect from a game dev project.
Okay, so Jonas is full of
That's
shit. I'm just kidding, by the way. No, this is great. I love this. This helps game developers so much, man, because it's nice for them to know, oh, he's just throwing planes on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, if
Quads.
you have kind of two options, right? Either you write a fancy shader that kind of darkens the edge of the screen, or you just throw in a gradient sprite. Obviously.
So why
the latter
not
is
just
much
use? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Well, why not just why not just do one big quad? Why do you have to slap those all over?
Yeah.
Why
There's
do
a
you have
couple-
them all rotated around like that? Why not just?
It's to get the shape that we wanted, right? So you can see the map has a sort of a specific shape. It's not perfectly round or something. It's like
Are those angled up? Are those
Yeah,
quads
they're-
angled up?
yeah, they're angled up.
Are they kind of angled up? Like what?
They are angled up. So
It says 0, 0, 0. The rotation is 0, 0, 0.
let's only look at the single one. I'll show you what we're working with. So we have these gradients here, right?
Yes.
And as you can see, one of them is not enough to cover the entire edge of the map.
I see.
So what we cheekily did is we just duplicated this and put it on every side of the map, so
I
that
see.
all of the outside area of the map is blacked out. And
I understand.
This is actually fantastic that you picked up on this immediately, because this is exactly one of those examples where it's like, this is not at all performance optimized. This is a horrible way to do this. But in this specific case, it really doesn't matter, because it's only like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them or so. So
Right.
if you have like 7 giant sprites floating around in the scene, it's kind of not that big of a problem. So it's worth the speed trade-off.
And so the idea with these gradients is to give the player an idea of the boundary of the map.
Yeah. Actually,
Okay.
this does compile, so we can just run it.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
If Unity wants to. So this is
The overworld. I see.
how it looks in-game.
Uh-huh.
If it kind of gets a little darker at the edges here, so when you
Trying to think of a better way to do that, and the only thing I could think of is a cookie with like a light, a cookie on the directional light, but I don't even know if that would do it.
Yeah, that would do it, but it's also during early access we changed the shape of the map quite often, so it's in a way it's also beneficial to stick with something that you can change very quickly. And one of the advantages of this solution is that you can change it quickly. If you ever change the shape, you just drag these around a bit and then.
Can you change the camera to be non-orthographic for us?
I can.
I would love to see how bad or good it looks.
So I can either navigate this, or I can see if we.
Did you
maybe
forget about your project structure already?
It's been a while. It's been a while. So there we go. This is.
Yeah, let's.
This is perspective cam.
It looks so much cheaper to me. It's not as beautiful and clean. So that's so funny.
Let's see if I can. Where's the full screen button in Unity? See, I even forget these.
Go to
basic.
game.
Right.
You have to. Oh, you can only change it so play focused is right there, and then you go to play maximize.
Yeah, that's the one. Thank you. Exactly. So, yeah, this looks very dumb.
Yeah, it does.
And also, one of the problems you can see here is that the UI camera is still.
Yeah. So don't
accidentally
change it to perspective before you upload a build to Steam.
No, don't
thing breaks.
accidentally commit what I show you here. Yeah, I guess it kind of looks nice in a way, but it's also, as you said, it looks more cheap.
Oh, sure. I've always had trouble being okay with doing an orthographic camera because, like my game Brave Boy, I could do an orthographic camera for that game, but there's something about sacrificing depth that really it's really hard for me to be willing to do. But there is something beautiful about an orthographic screenshot. It's just there's something really cozy about it. I don't know. So that's cool, man.
I mean, for strategy games, it's obviously very easy to get away with it because it's kind of the standard perspective for strategy games anyway. So also helps players to quickly see what the game's about.
Right,
Because it already
exactly.
looks familiar.
So what's the can you tell me about the hierarchy of this scene? Like your naming conventions and how you're using prefabs and all that stuff.
So this is, of course, the level select scene. So this is a bit different from the typical Thronefall level, but usually the hierarchy looks something like this. So you can see it's relatively clean-ish if you collapse everything. There are a couple of random stuff floating around here. For example, the ground is just plain. But other than that, we have all of the levels nicely sorted into categories here, so that whenever you want to edit or move a specific level to a different place, you can just grab the whole thing and move it around, essentially.
How are those, by the way, how are those pieces? Are they meshes or are they sprites? Like the pieces of the board?
They are meshes that we just quickly made in Blender.
And they have an edge painted on there? A black edge?
You pick up on all the details. So actually, the edge lines that you see here are a custom geometry script that we wrote for Thronefall. And essentially what it does is it just has a couple of children that are empty game objects, and you can just move them around and use them to change the geometry. So we can just draw simple lines and shapes like this.
I love that you wrote something custom for that, but for the fade quads, you're just like, screw it.
So you know why we have something custom for that is because we actually need that in a lot of different places. We don't just need it for drawing lines. We also use it for actually building entire levels are just built using these tools. And while we're at it, I'll show you. Let's go to one of the levels that uses this quite heavily.
Dude, that's crazy. The levels are named Durstein. Like you picked a name and you named it that. In my head, I'd call this Blue Mountain Scene because I change the names of my levels every week. You know, I'm like, no, I don't like that name, and I'll change it. So I try and make all my scenes super basic names that are descriptive. But you guys committed to a name and you stuck with it, right?
Yeah. Sometimes. I think it happened once or twice where we changed the name of the level after the fact, and that was a bit annoying. Either we renamed it, or oftentimes we also just don't rename it, and then it has the wrong name, but it's kind of like whatever.
Right.
So the entire level, this entire level is also built using the exact same tool. Everything's made of these paths here. I'm not sure you can see it, so I'm just going to move this out of the block a little bit.
Whoa. Path mesher.
This is our little script. It's essentially a spline. They're
wild.
They're ready-made scripts on the asset store that you can just grab that do the same thing. So instead of begging us to give us the script, just look on the asset store. I'm not sure why we rewrote this stuff like this.
Wait, you made it?
Yeah.
No way. Are you charging for it on the asset store?
It's not on the asset store. I'm just saying other people have made tools like this.
I see.
That you can use if you want something like this.
Yeah.
But yeah, the idea is just that you have like a little path and you can just draw around, move the individual points, kind of even change their thickness if you want to.
And is there a mesh collider on the parent object?
It does have a mesh collider so that you can walk on it.
Okay.
That is correct.
So it's creating a mesh at real time.
Yes.
How is that with performance? Because it can't be static.
Actually, creating meshes in real time is not that big of a problem. It's like you can just, there are only a couple hundred vertices that you need to connect. So doing that in real time is.
Is it at real time? In play mode, if you were to change a spline, would it adjust the mesh?
I think it would, but let's give it a go.
Because that means you can't bake lights. I think if you wanted to bake, you couldn't bake. I could be wrong, but
Yeah, we don't need to bake.
That's the benefit of exterior scenes for anyone's listening. Exteriors are great because there's one directional light. Interiors, it's really tough because everything's lit by like a billion, lamps and windows. So you have to bake a lot.
Actually, I can't change this during runtime.
Okay.
Because one of the performance optimizations we made.
Yeah.
You can see here in play mode, whenever I click one of these rocks, I select an entire group of rocks. So these have all been combined into a single mesh.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if I check this out in normal edit mode, then you can see that these are all individual rocks that we can move around. So this is also one of our optimization scripts that kind of merges these meshes to reduce draw calls.
Would you be able to, if you don't mind, can we see what the rocks look like without stylized shading and make it smooth? I'd love to see what happens to the game's style if you were to smooth that out. Is that possible?
We do have some levels with smooth rocks, so I think I just need to go to a different level.
Go for wind.
So this one does have smooth rocks, as you can see here.
No, I mean the shading of it.
Exactly. These have smooth shading. Or do you mean get rid of the cell shading?
You could still have cell shading that's smooth. So like in the material there, flat kit, stylized surface, does it have a smoothness option?
So you want to blend between the areas a little bit?
Yeah, blending. That's really what.
Shadow edge.
Yeah. I wanted to see what it looks like. And then also the color, the dark green. Can I see what that looks like?
I don't think we can change that because that's just the shadow color.
It looks so bad. I see. I see why you made it look really crisp.
Yeah,
it was a great decision. I love it. And that's Paul, right? Is Paul sort of the visual guy?
I would say Paul is the mastermind behind all of the art stuff for the most part. Yeah. So
go ahead.
I guess the main trick we got away with for Thronefall is we made, or what we're trying to get away with as an indie developer always is you're trying to get away with making very crappy assets look very good. That's your objective, because then you can fill your game with crappy assets and it still looks good. That's the dream.
That's right.
And that's definitely something I think we achieved with Thronefall, because we look at all of the 3D models and they're like very amateurish, very, very basic modeling skills required to make something like this.
Well, and lighting is a huge part of that. Like, if you were to hit play for me, I would love to see this. If we were to move the directional light in a imprecise or a bad position, I'd love to see how bad the game looks, if you don't mind, with just a bad directional light.
No, my controller's not plugged in. Okay. So I guess we'll purchase some stuff and then change the direction.
Yeah, let's see how bad it looks with a different directional light. Like, move it in a bad position where it's like all shadows.
Maybe do something horrible.
Yeah, all of a sudden the game doesn't work. It just doesn't look good.
Oh my, Thomas, why are you making me do this?
Yeah, don't push this to get. That would be bad. But it's cool though. It definitely has a moody look, but it's unworkable,
It kind of looks okay at night, surprisingly.
Yeah, because you got that point light. That's so funny. Yeah, lighting. The problem with using bad assets is that typically with bad assets, what makes them look good is a very precise set of shaders and lights. And in color theory, good color theory. So when you go in there and you tweak it slightly, let's say somebody's like, well, I'll just go in and tweak the color. Suddenly it all doesn't work. Like if those yellow rocks were or if the grass wasn't that nice teal grass, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't look stylish. So color theory is super duper important, right?
Yep, we have a color
Whoa.
manager here where we can tweak all of the colors in the scene.
Bro,
So
I
this is,
love that. Can you show us some changes?
Sure. Can, for example, grab the ground color here and just make it a different color or something.
It looks great though, even with different. Yeah, like. Oh no.
Make it red or something. But yeah, you can get away with very surprising things sometimes.
Y'all, that's amazing.
That
Really,
looks kind of cool.
that's a really smart tool to make. You
Yeah,
can
and then
unify a level's theme really quick, right?
And then the cool thing is we can also very easily swap these out. So I can, for example, also make this one look like a different level.
So you're swapping out the color scheme, and the color scheme is a scriptable object.
Exactly. I can make this look like winter and so on and so forth. So.
Did you create some of these color schemes, or is this all Paul?
It's a mixed effort. Like Paul did all of the fine tuning on these, but I created the rough drafts for a lot of them because I did the initial level design and then Paul did a polishing pass on them. So usually it was like me doing like a dirty draft of how I would imagine the colors to look like, and then Paul usually did some fine tuning. And sometimes that fine tuning was entirely different from what I envisioned, but was usually better than my version.
Yep. Now, how often are you instantiating things, Jonas? Or are you using object pooling?
So there is no object pooling. None.
Okay.
Zero. And not saying do that.
Shame on you. At least that's what my live stream audience would tell me.
I think we're barely getting away with it with the amount of objects we have. Because we do have, I don't know, we have like a limit of 200, 300 enemies spawning per night. And with like 200, 300 enemies spawning per night, you can kind of get away with them not being pooled. And then one of the things that we really should have been pooled is visual effects. So arrows that are being shot through the air, destruction effects and so on. We should have done pooling for that. We don't. And we barely get away with it. But
hey, are the I'm just going from one thing to another here. Are the shadows opaque because of the shader, or are they opaque because you've set them to be opaque with the directional light?
What are opaque shadows? What do you mean exactly?
All of your shadows are completely blue. They are not, there's no fade or opacity shift.
Yeah.
Is it possible to make them less dark?
Yes, it is possible, but I'm not sure if it's a one-click kind of thing. I can check it out. I can try on the ground material. Let's see.
The reason I ask is I'm curious why you decided to do that, or like what it would look like. I guess what I'm saying is, I think it unifies the theme. It unifies the style, and it's a brave decision because you got to make sure there's not too many shadows. Because then it can ruin the gameplay, right? So,
okay, I can't figure it out, but
oh man, yeah, you're working on another game right now.
There are too many sliders.
That's great. And then another question I had was, are there any really cool tricks that are just like that you want to tell us about that just like are almost magic tricks visually that you're using?
I think you should have been asking probably Paul and also Friedemann about this because they're both.
Friedemann worked on this?
No, he doesn't. But he's also a very, very good artist. Actually,
I see.
Very good.
Hey, are you using post-processing?
We are using some very minimal post-processing, but if you turn it off, you're almost not gonna see any difference whatsoever. Like I think it's
like tone mapping.
No tone mapping. I think it's very tiny amount of chromatic aberration. And that's pretty much it.
Really? Yeah. Why did you do that? I think I could see it, actually. It's very subtle.
Yeah.
What was the goal there? To make it look retro?
I guess that's a question for Paul. I honestly like it with or without. It looks almost identical. Doesn't really... I was like, I don't need this, but if you think it looks good, let's keep it. Whatever.
What... what's the point of a local manager versus a global manager? And for the record, I do know the answer, but I want my audience to kind of get an idea.
So these two here, right?
Yes, sir.
It's not just a manager, it's managers. It's like these are all of the singletons.
What? It looked so pretty when it was collapsed or closed.
Yep.
Now.
Yep. These are all individual manager objects with different tasks in the game. These are all singletons. And I know, your stream audience would murder you for something like this, because typically, if you want to do ideal code architecture, then you want everything to be as modular as possible. You don't want interdependencies where one script depends too much on another one. You kind of want every script to be like a Lego piece that you can just plug together. That's not how Thronefall's architecture works. We have lots and lots of centralized managers that all have interconnected dependencies and all depend on each other to do various things.
Yep.
And I think it would have been difficult to get away with this with a bigger project, but for Thronefall it was just fine, actually.
So let me ask you this. Singletons, in my mind, are for global stuff.
Yes.
So why did you do it with local stuff? Local, I would assume local means it's local to the scene.
It is local to the scene, but
So why do you need it to be a singleton?
You can still do local singletons. There's maybe very, very small misunderstanding on your end. Singleton just means that there's just one object of this type. So typically you do something like static, instance, blah, 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 singleton, whatever.
Yeah.
And then the advantage of that is just that you can reference that script from wherever you want. And you don't have to do the find component of type thing, which is
correct.
Which is slow.
Yeah. The reason I say that is I just always I only ever use singletons for global stuff. But I guess you're right. I guess it makes sense to use singletons for local stuff, so that's cool.
Yeah, so I guess the rule of thumb is if you already know there's only ever gonna be one of a particular thing, then just make it a singleton by default. Then whenever
you can access it whenever you want without doing get component.
Exactly.
Ah, yes, okay. Sweet, dude. So, are there naming conventions here that don't follow? Like some things have spaces, some don't.
Yeah, no, there are no naming conventions. It's if you're a two-person team, I think you sort of naturally converge on some things. So it's not a complete mess just because over the time we kind of develop similar preference and that kind of thing. But we're not like, oh my god, this object in the scene doesn't have a space here and it should be camel case or whatever. It's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
This runtime mesh fusion, okay, I guess it needs some spaces here, but this is not something we waste our time on. Like we have more important things to do.
I always have this like fantasy of starting a new project, and the naming conventions are perfect. Everything's clean, uppercase, like or what do you call it? What do you call it when only one is uppercase in the word?
So
the first letter. Typecase or something, I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, whatever.
But I have a fairy tale fantasy about this, where and everything's spaced out clean. All of my classes are uppercased. All of my variables have the exact same naming conventions. But then you get a team involved. Once you get the project rolling, you get a team involved, and then invariably, every once in a while, someone pushes without you knowing. They push a variable that uses an underscore when I don't use underscores. I never ever use underscores. And then somebody puts an underscore in my variable or in the project's variables. And then slowly it just starts to degrade the naming conventions, and the syntax. So it's just what happens.
And naming conventions are easy to maintain if you work alone.
Oh, yeah. Relatively
easy. If you work on a team, good luck.
Let me ask you about variables. Can we take a look at some of your variables? Are you descriptive with your variables, or are you as indescriptive as possible and you want your variable names to be very clean and short?
I have a very definitive answer on this. I want them to be as descriptive as possible. So I'm
Me
on
too.
the. I'll literally make variable names that are half the line in
I know.
length.
They're like comments, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I do that sometimes. Yeah. I'm like, I really don't want to forget what this variable is for later, so better
No.
just try to come up with a good name. But then also on the other side, oftentimes shorter variables are enough to describe what you want to say. So
Like
it-
health, for example.
exactly.
Cool, man.
Let's have a look at some scripts. Let's maybe an enemy script or something. Let's pick something. Have a look at the mole man or whatever. Let's see.
So this
no,
is
that's not
this is not a
actually-
class. This is a
This is a scriptable object.
scriptable object. Do you want to explain to the audience the difference?
So
You'll do better than me.
Scriptable objects are just essentially meant to hold pure data. Another thing you can do if you want to write very clean projects is that you try to separate your data and your game logic as much as possible, so that if you want to extend the game later on, all you need to do is add data and you don't need to write any additional code.
Correct.
So, for example, if you add an additional weapon or something, then you can just put in another entry into your weapons database and everything already works perfectly. And essentially, scriptable objects are that they are data entries.
You can the way that we do it, for example, with weapons in our game, all of the weapons in our first person controller are, and I'm not telling you this, I'm telling the audience because you already know this, but we've got like a pistol, we've got a magnum, we've got an automatic, we've got a chain gun, we've got a rocket launcher. All of that data associated with each weapon, like the shoot speed, the shoot power, the reload speed, all that stuff, the sprite for the crosshair, all of that stuff is in one scriptable object called the weapon manager. And if we need to adjust the balancing of the game, we can adjust the balancing in that single scriptable object. We don't have to go into each prefab for each weapon and adjust it. Do you feel like that's a valid case for a scriptable object?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Totally.
Cool.
So as you can see here also with our enemies, they look very silly sometimes up close. Like this one, I haven't even seen this one up close.
Wow, I don't even know what I'm looking at.
Yep. But then when you zoom out, it kind of starts
cool,
looking
dude.
like something.
Yeah,
Very interesting.
that's awesome.
Okay, but let's, for example, have a look at a script here. For example, the auto attack script. This is something we have on a lot of different objects. Let's just check out how it looks. So you can see here, this is sort of the kind of variables I would write: cooldown duration, cooldown after spawn, cooldown randomization. So mostly very self-explanatory variable names. Yeah, and then I guess it looks relatively normal. It doesn't look super clean. It's not overly commented. Like mostly,
It's also not overly complicated. It's not like you're doing. I'm sure you're very clever, but I'm not seeing anything that's super clever here.
That's right. Yeah, trying.
I
to
like
keep
that. I mean,
every-
I like my scripts to be very, very, very like layman, simple and normal,
and
nothing crazy.
You know, the trick of writing clean code, I think, in theory, is not writing simple code. It's just hiding away the complexities. For example, what for example a beginner maybe would have done here is they would have inlined the entire on attack function here. Like, okay, whenever we attack, we just write everything that happens right here in the update function. But obviously, the cleaner way is to just have it in a separate function.
And for people who are just starting to code who are listening, anytime you write the same code twice, obviously slam that into a single function, and then you can use that function multiple times. Obviously, but
even for stuff like this one here, this would be one example where I could have done a little bit better, I guess, because we have find auto attack target, and then we also have find auto attack target with I guess various settings. I wonder if I could have just done something like this, where in this simpler function I call the other function with some default with some defaults like like something like this.
Yep.
And this also would have made it a bit cleaner, I guess.
Well, that's
But-
the nature of game dev, is you look at your
Yeah.
old projects and it's like looking at an old photo of yourself from high school.
Yeah. It is. That's
Very
how it is. And
cringy.
also, I'm not sure if it's cringe. It's also sometimes like this script is already so simple and so short. Why bother optimizing
agree.
it further? It's like,
I
Yeah.
agree. I've gotten to the point with my project, dude, where I'm at the end of it and I don't care what kind of band-aids I'm slapping on the code. I don't care. I'm just like, get it done. The clean code, that's out the door for me for my latest project. So
it as always, it depends on what you're trying to build. The bigger the project that you want to build, the more attention you need to pay to clean code, because spaghetti code just doesn't scale as well into bigger projects.
well, that's kind of my point though, is that we're not scaling the project anymore.
Yeah.
It's reached its max capacity. So I'm just like spaghetti code all day to get it
Yep.
done.
That's exactly right.
And I'm not going to reuse the system.
Yep.
Hell no.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever reused one of your code bases before for another project, but I can't bring myself to do it because I'm like, I don't want to live in this code anymore. I hate this code.
Yeah, I think what's the main problem with reusing code snippets is exactly what you're saying. You're like, the next time you need something like this, you're like, I'm building it from scratch, and I'm gonna do it 2 times better than I did
That's
last
right.
time.
That's right. That's
So
right.
you never really get to the point where it makes sense to reuse something.
Sure.
'Cause you
Sure.
can just do a better job building it from scratch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you wanted to show before we wrap up here, Jonas?
No, if there's nothing specific, nothing else that you're interested in. I would be very curious to see Twisted Tower project tour sometime. I hope
I would
we
love
get
to
to
show
see
you
that.
it. I would
Yeah.
love to show you it. I mean, maybe we can do another podcast and I could show you that after the game's done. After
Yes,
the game's
yes.
done.
Either you'll do it on your channel, or I'll
come
invite
on.
you to my channel sometime.
Also, hey, don't forget to check out Bezi to accelerate and simplify your development workflow. Early access is now open for everybody. That includes you. So you can try it out for yourself right now simply by clicking the link in the description.